Charter Trustees, officers, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the worshipful, the Mayor of Bournemouth.
Good evening all. My name is Councillor George Farquhar and it is my honour to be the Charter Mayor for this year. Welcome to the Bournemouth Charter Trustees meeting of the 30th of January 2025. I would like to welcome you to this Charter Trustees meeting of the Bournemouth Charter Trustees and to the press and the members of the public who may well be watching. In order to ensure that the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone follow the ground rules for speaking. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand physically to indicate. Where there appears to be a consensus in the meeting for a motion, I will ask if there is any dissension. When a formal vote is required, this will be carried out by a show of hands. Charter Trustees are advised that this meeting is being live streamed and is available for live and on-demand viewing via the Council's YouTube page. Before we start the proceedings on the agenda, as you know, the Charter Trustees is a non-political body, with the primary objective being to maintain and promote the historic and ceremonial traditions of Bournemouth. I am keen that we all work together to maintain this objective. First item of business, apologies for absence. Honorary Clerk, do we have any apologies, if you please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have apologies for absence have been received from the following Charter Trustees: Councillor Hazel Allen, Councillor Simon Bull, Councillor John Challoner, Councillor Adrian Chapman-Law, Councillor Anne Filer, Councillor Rachel Maidment and Councillor Michelle Dower. If there are any other apologies from the floor.
I would invite any apologies from the floor.
Councillor Broadhead.
Any more? Councillor Rigby.
Councillor Sarah Armstrong.
Any more for any more? Splendid. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Honorary Clerk, can you please report any declarations of interest received?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None have been received, but if members do believe they may have a declaration or a conflict of interest, then if they could follow the chart that's set out in the agenda papers, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. We will now take item 3 on the agenda, minutes of the previous meeting of the 4th of December 2024. Are we all agreed as a true record? Any dissension? Thank you. The Honorary Clerk will note that. Charter Mayor's Report. This is my opportunity to explain what I've been up to in the last, since, well, December 4th. Unlike last time, hopefully, because I was a Luddite the last time, I have made some notes and didn't manage to delete them before I actually turned up here. So we're stuck. First thing which I want to say is how pleased I am to see such a good turnout today. It's absolutely lifts my spirits because it does actually show that working together, we are prepared in this room to uphold and maintain and promote the primary objective of the Charter Trustees and the Mayoralty of Bournemouth. Since the 4th of December, I had 9 engagements before Christmas. It should have been actually 6 extra, so it should have been 17. Unfortunately, I caught the flu. But one of the things which is so good about the Mayoralty is that we have a Deputy Mayor, and she was kind enough to cover those engagements which I myself, in the office of the Mayor, couldn't actually do. Since the new year, I've attended 11 engagements. These engagements include regalia talks. Now, a regalia talk, and I'm very pleased that some of your number here had the opportunity to attend a regalia talk immediately prior to this meeting. to understand a little bit about the constraints which are upon the Mayoralty of late, and how we actually get around those to actually continue to promote the office of the Mayoralty to the people of Bournemouth. Regalia talks are attended by schools, community groups, and essentially anybody which the Mayor chooses to invite to the parlour. Now, you've all been helping and supporting me to do something which I really enjoy doing, which is actually going to schools and to community groups within your own particular wards that you represent. So I've had numerous visits out there, and by way of thank you return, we normally invite those schools and those community groups to come in for a regalia talk. I've also had the opportunity to present what we call the Mayor's Awards to the Sea Cadets and other volunteers who go that extra mile within our communities to actually give of themselves and volunteer for the service of others. Being off with a flu before Christmas, unfortunately I did miss out on a variety of Christmas events, carol services, light switch-ons, and even a panto. So I'm quite bitterly disappointed about that. But one of the things which we did have on a regalia talk is international students. We have a number of international schools within the Bournemouth, the boundaries of the old Bournemouth borough. And these include school visits from students from China, Switzerland and Costa Rica. It was one of the international students that asked me a question, and I just wanted to sort of highlight on my visits to schools and when they come in for a regalia talk, the very, very high standard of education and engagement by our children across the boroughs that come to visit us. I'm absolutely blown away by the intelligence and the engagement and the willingness to learn more about Bournemouth's history of the students. But one student, international student, asked me the question, can you be a mayor of Bournemouth if you're a Muslim? And I hadn't given it any thought, and I replied, well, since I'm an atheist and a Republican, I see no reason why not. But it did get me onto the thought of the diversity that we have within the mayoralty and within the local government here. And the question was put in such a way that it was a genuine inquiry of how do you become a mayor. But again, it got me thinking about diversity. And one of the things which I said at the last one is that from when we last met, is that I'd become a scout. I had an invite to a scout camp. I'd become a scout. But one of the things since the last time we met is that I've taken a stage further on my late diagnosis of ADHD. And I've been using the platform for the benefit of children to actually understand that just because you are different doesn't mean that you're strange or there's something wrong with you. So I'm not declaring that I'm the first mayor of Bournemouth that has a diversity. But what I think is important is to use the platform for its relevance to society today, particularly amongst the schools. And I was really pleased to be able to work with Autism Unlimited to do a little piece to camera about people's journey to the roles that they end up in. And one of those was as the Mayor of Bournemouth. Must also do a shout out to the Bournemouth School for Girls Founders Day, because again, I think that's a very, very high bar within the Bournemouth boundaries that's set by our education standards. And just of late, I also attended the Holocaust Memorial events of last weekend. So that's a roundup from me. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the report, item 5, the report from the Bournemouth Civic Working Group. We'll take that agenda item now, please, and if I may call upon Trustee Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Historically, attendance at Charter Trustee meetings has been inconsistent. At times, the Civic Office has been required to call each trustee individually to confirm their attendance and ensure a quorum. Mindful of this, the Constitutional Working Group has reviewed the trustees' attendance at meetings since the start of the municipal year, May 2024. This data can be found in Appendix A of the report. The standing orders, as adopted at the meeting held on the 4th of December, make provision for the Charter Trustees to be removed if that councillor has, without sufficient cause, failed to attend 2 or more consecutive meetings. The Charter Trustee Handbook adopted the meeting held on the 4th of December 24 and also makes provision for trustees to submit a request in writing to the Honorary Clerk that they be removed from the membership in accordance with Section 7. In line with the relevant procedures set out, the Constitutional Working Group instructed the Honorary Clerk to write to any trustee who had not attended the 2 most recent meetings, asking them to confirm whether they wish to continue as Charter Trustees or whether they wish to be considered for removal. An example letter has been reproduced at Appendix B of the report. At the time of the writing, I'm pleased to say that no trustee had submitted a working request for their removal, and the Constitutional Working Group is therefore satisfied that the letter successfully highlighted the need for trustees to attend the meeting wherever possible. Therefore, the Working Group does not recommend that any trustee is removed at this time. Following this process, it's suggested that Charter trustees may wish to consider reviewing attendance at each Charter Trustee meeting. I'll pause there because the the clerk to the trustees has an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, just to update that in the last couple of days after the papers were published, we have actually had 2 requests from Charter Trustees to be removed. It's too late to bring a paper to this meeting, so I'm proposing that we bring a paper through the working group to the next meeting of Charter Trustees to consider that.
Thank you. So therefore, the recommendation is that Charter Trustees note the attendance record set out in Appendix A and continue to monitor attendance at each Charter Trustee meeting through a standard agenda item. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Just before I open this up for debate or questions of the chair of the Civic Working Group, this was a troubling issue for myself coming into the role of mayor. It is a particularly difficult task and quite a demanding task on our Civic Working Group, which are made up of members of Democratic Services. These are paid members of staff to carry out a fairly highly unusual role, as anybody who attends the regalia talk can understand. But it's not in our favour as Charter Trustees not to reply to meetings and not to expect an individual phone call from a member of the Civic Party from Democratic Services to phone you up to establish if you're actually attending the meeting itself. So this is why I'm so pleased that it was put to the Civic Working Group to come up with a solution, and I thank on record the Honorary Clerk for writing to all members. As we've had with the update here, it gives the opportunity, and something else which we've introduced since the last change to the standing orders and the handbook, the opportunity, because we're all here in an ex officio role, because we've been elected within the bounds of the old Bournemouth Borough, then we are automatically trustees. But some of us may not wish to be Charter Trustees. They may not be able to be Charter Trustees and may not be willing to actually uphold the primary objective of the Charter Trustees. So I welcome the fact that 2 trustees have decided that they don't wish to continue in this municipal term as Charter Trustees. If for no other reason, then it means that the Democratic Services job is that much easier, and it's that much easier to actually conduct the business of the mayoralty of Bournemouth, because we can ensure that we're quorate and we can carry on with the important business. We only meet 4 times a year, and we can't afford not to be able to carry on our business. I'll now open it up to debate. Sorry, my mistake. Councillor Williams, do you have a seconder?
Well, can I ask for a seconder? Thank you.
Councillor Canavan, thank you. Any debate on this recommendation? Any questions for the Civic Working Group Chair? Councillor Williams, would you care to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I thought I had summed up in asking for the recommendation to be brought forward, so I so do. Thank you.
I will now put it to the membership of the trustees. Do we accept the report as written and recommended? Any dissension? Thank you greatly. Moving on to the business which I mentioned just a moment ago. This item 6 is budget and precept. We're now on to item 6 of the agenda, the budget and precept for 2025-26. Matt Filmer, the responsible financial officer, would you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Charter Trustees. So I thought I'd just give a quick update in terms of where we are with the in-year position, because I did give an update back in December that we were forecasting an underspend of just shy of 6,000. But that did include 11,000 as a share of the King Council advice that we spoke at that meeting. Since that report, the council's agreed to pick up the full cost of the KC, so that 11,000 has now been removed. So we're forecasting an underspend of 18,000. All the detail in terms of the forecast for 24-25 is on Appendix A, and Appendix A also sets out the proposed detailed budget for 25-26. We had a budget workshop with a number of Charter Trustees back in December to go over the proposed budget, which has helped shape what we've got in front of us today. Now, because of that KC advice, a number of lines have been removed from the 25-26 budget. So that includes the Remembrance Sunday support and the Civic Awards. But because of the, how to term it, we've now got a clearer remit of what the Charter Trustees can do. We have increased the hospitality budget because we feel that there will be more civic events and more regalia talks. And we have increased it from 6,000 up to 10,000. There has been a small increase in terms of the support costs from the council, but overall staffing costs, which mostly are from the Democratic support team, have reduced by 7,000. The report also sets out the reserves that the Charter Trustees hold, which is set out in Figure 1. We are, for 24-25, forecasting a reduction of 5,000 to support the budget. But for 25-26, we're not budgeting to draw down any reserves. So this, the 25-26 forecast position leaves us around 65% of the total council tax precept, and it would be my professional view that we hold around 20% for risk coverage. So I think we're more than enough in terms of what we've got. So moving on to council tax. Part of the council tax calculation, we rely on the council tax base, and that's the number of properties in Bournemouth that we can levy the precept against. And we've had an unusual year on the tax base because of the introduction of the second homes premium. So the tax base has actually increased quite a lot for Bournemouth, which means that we can spread our precept over more properties. So taking everything I've just laid out into account, I'm going to propose that we set a precept for 25-26 at £151,713, which allows the Band D charge for 25-26 to be reduced from £2.27 to £2.24. So I'll stop there, Mr. Mayor. Happy to take any questions.
Just before I open it up to the floor, Mr. Filmer, can you confirm who's picking up the tab for the KC's report, please?
It's the council, Mr. Mayor. The full cost.
Well, thank you very much to the council. As Charter Trustees, we dodged a bullet there. Councillor Beasley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to have a quick word, if I may, on the issue of the KC's advice. And I also attended, as did one or two other members here, the Pool Charter Trustees meeting at the Guildhall yesterday evening. And this subject was touched on in terms of the advice as it affects pool charter trustees. My concern is that, as I understand it, that KC's advice is not going to be shared with the Charter Trustees for Bournemouth, and that it is the property of BCP Council. That may or may not be the case, but my point and my issue is that it makes it extremely difficult to understand the background to not only this decision, but anything else that may be influenced out of that KC's advice concerning the Bournemouth Charter Trustees. And without that knowledge, it is going to put us in a very prejudiced position in the future, potentially. And I would ask again if we could have sight of it, and if we can't, what is the reason why, as BCP councillors, we can't ask the council for the sight of that KC's advice, separate from being charter trustees of either Bournemouth or Poole or both?
Thank you very much, Councillor Beasley. Just before I ask the honorary clerk to comment, I did check on a variety of things from the last meeting that we had, and this was raised and it was minuted that it was concern of the Charter Trustees that they didn't have sight on. At that last meeting, I think the terminology which used was legally privileged. That didn't mean that it belonged to BCP Council, that we didn't have the opportunity to view it as Charter Trustees. You have certain rights as a councillor, but you also have certain rights as trustees. You can attend any meeting of the Civic Working Group. I'm sure the Chair would not deny you that access. Likewise, you could attend any meeting of the Budget Working Group for the Civic Budget. I checked in with the Honorary Clerk just last week. If any members who were in the room last time that wished to have sight of it had actually approached the Honorary Clerk, as he offered, to allow them sight of the KC's report. The Honorary Clerk replied at that time they hadn't. So, Honorary Clerk, has anybody approached you as of this date to actually have sight of the KC's report? And in answer to Trustee Beasley, is there any reason why they don't have that ability to do so if they wish?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I haven't had any direct requests for I would just need to check with the Council's monetary officer, but the working group, for example, have had the KC's advice and had sight of that. So my sense is now that we've taken the decisions on it, that might be in a different position. So if trustees would like that, let me know. I will check with the monetary officer tomorrow.
Does that satisfy all your points, Councillor Beasley?
Yes, it does. I'd very much like to have sight of it. It conflicts, though, with what I understood we were being told at the Pool Charter Trustees meeting only last night, and colleagues who were present would probably concur with what I've just said. So I'm very pleased to hear that clarification, and perhaps that could be conveyed to the chair of the working group in Poole, which is Councillor Howell, so that he can convey that message through to the Pool Charter Trustees as well.
Honorary Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to confirm, of course, there are two bits of legal advice, one for Poole, one for Bournemouth. They are slightly different. But I will check tomorrow morning and tell both this working group and the Poole working group as well, and the Charter Trustees.
Indeed, and just by way of reminder to all trustees, Pool Charter Trustees are their own recognised body, and their responsibility is for the mayoralty of Poole in the same way that we have. Historically, Poole Borough may well have differed to Bournemouth Borough in the way that the mayoralty was conducted, and to my understanding is that the bill for the KC's advice was for those two separate pieces of advice, depending on how they were actually approaching their standing orders and what exercises or procedures that they had in place. For us here in Bournemouth, it was very much are we working within our prime objective? And that's what the advice came down, is that we can only work within the prime objective that we've got. And as I said at the start, this is why we now present as regalia talks, because that helps to promote and maintain the historic ceremonies and traditions of the Mayoralty of Bournemouth. Any more questions from the floor? Trustee Rampton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got a question on the line which is communication and promotions, which has a sum of £400 allocated to it. And at the Pool Charter Trustees meeting, the budget was vastly increased to £10,000. So it's felt that the office of the Sheriff, Mayor and Deputy Mayor needed a higher level of promotion, and therefore the budget needed to be increased to allow that to happen. And so my question is, Mr Mayor, do you feel that £400 is actually sufficient to do the same within Bournemouth? And it's great that you want to do all the regalia talks, but if people don't know about it because the comms aren't really up to scratch or the promotion isn't happening, then perhaps that figure isn't sufficient. Thank you.
I feel there might be a motion coming on. Before we entertain that, again, we are here to discuss the Bournemouth budget, and it's interesting to find that the Pool Charter Trustees have a different emphasis on that particular line item. Can you throw some light on it, please, Mr. Pilcher?
For you, Mr Mayor. For you, Mr Mayor. It was a direct request from the Civic Working Group to include the 10,000 in terms of communication and promotion for the Charter Trustees of Pool. I haven't had similar sort of direction from the Budget Working Group for Bournemouth. I don't want to get into the detail around Pool too much because we're here to talk about Bournemouth, but as what you heard last night from Councillor Howell, that 10,000 figure wasn't really based on anything specific, and also just pick up the Pool Charter Trustees is supported via reserves. So if Bournemouth Charter Trustees wanted to increase communication and promotion, there's significant reserves that could help support that.
Councillor Rampton.
Yes, thank you for that information. I think, mentioning Pool again, it was an amount that was put in. It wasn't a target to spend up to. It was just there as an allocation. So my personal feeling is that perhaps that figure should be increased to allow more visibility of the Bournemouth mayoralty. Thank you.
Is that a motion? Shall we carry on with the debate a little bit more, if you please, Councillor Rampton, and we'll see if a motion comes from the actual debate itself. Thank you. Councillor Connolly.
Thank you. I was just going to ask about the level of reserves, and it mentions 20% recommended. Could you talk a little bit about why you've settled on that amount of reserves as being appropriate and what the options are we could do with it instead, and how it kind of compares to what other similar bodies might do?
Through you, Mr Mayor. That's our general sit for guidance that we tend to follow at the Council when we take out sort of risk assessments and provisions that we need to set aside. So I think it's more of a sort of benchmark amount that tends to be used by public organisations. That's what's driven that decision.
Any further debate? Councillor Carl-Brown.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just wondering, because of the KC's advice, I think some things have been shifted over to the council. For example, I think Remembrance Sunday was down for about a £10,000 worth of expenditure. I just wonder what the level of saving, in inverted commas, as it were, was or is as a result to the Charter Trustees.
Mr Filmer.
For you, Mr Mayor, I haven't got that figure prepared, but you could take two lines and add them together, which will give you a feel for it. So The Remembrance Sundays, you said, was 10,000. That's £10,000 saving. The Civic Awards for 24-25 is £2,000. There's no Civic Awards for 25-26. That's another £2,000. Those are the key savings, because the war commemorations for D-Day was a one-off event to be supported by reserves.
Just on this subject, the Honorary Clerk's got a suggestion as regards the difference between the line item for pool compared to the line item for here for marketing. I am aware in my duties, because I've carried out, and thanks very much to those trustees who actually helped with the audit and the inventory of the regalia that we have, is that our regalia is in a fairly poor state of repair at the moment. Consequently, there is expenditure that's going out. It is budgeted. But what I am confident about is that with the responsible financial officer, we have sufficient in reserves to deal with in-house or in-year issues that may pop up, such as emergency repairs. With the nature of the regalia, because its insurance costs are very high and because of its historical connections, we can only go to qualified preferred suppliers for the repairs, so they can be quite unexpected for those costs. So I'm happy and comfortable with the reserve levels as such that in the next mayoral year, then that can cover those. But if I call upon the Honorary Clerk for that particular line item for any sort of view that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was only going to suggest that it was a very strong discussion within the working group of the Poole Charter Trustees about a potential need to increase communications and publicity around the Mayor and greater awareness. And that led to a discussion about putting a budget provision aside. What I was going to suggest was, of course, we can keep a very close eye on that. We can tell you what's happening. We can tell you how they're using that. And if that proves to be helpful and useful and good value for money, then you might decide to take the money from reserves to fund that during the year in a similar way. So my sense is we can use that best practice. So I'm not sure whether Councillor Hampton wishes to move to specifically put it in there, or actually whether you'd be content that we'll make sure that the Mayor is aware. We have a single mayoral support team that works across both mayoralties, and I'm sure if they saw something working in Poole that was working very effectively, that they would pass that message through to Bournemouth as well.
Trustee Rampton.
Content with that suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or debate on this matter? So,
need the budget to be proposed and seconded, I think.
So, if I can, from the chair, recommend that the budget be moved and recommended, I'll seek a seconder from the floor, if you please. Councillor Lawrence Williams. Thank you. Agreed? Any dissension? Thank you. That's carried. Agenda item number 7, a review of the risk register. The review of the risk register, Neil Fraser, Deputy Head of Democratic Services. Would you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, trustees, just hopefully a quick one, although obviously any questions I'm happy to answer. The format of the risk register, which is attached to the Appendix 1, has been informed by a recommendation from audit to use their preferred format. That's why it looks a little bit different, but the lines are all the same as last year's, and all scores are the same or downgraded due to the mitigation actions we've taken to address those risks. There is one additional risk in relation to a service level agreement which sets out the agreement for the provision of support between BCP Council and the trustees. That is a direct result of a recommendation from the audit team that such a document should be drafted and agreed. It is in the early stages. It will be brought through to the Civic Working Group for comment before bringing to a future meeting of the Charter Trustees for adoption. And happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Please, from the floor. Any questions? Any debate? None indicated. May I move that there is a consensus? Motion carried. Agenda item number 7, appointment of the office of the Mayor of Bournemouth 25-26 and the subsequent Deputy Mayor of Bournemouth 26-27. Appointment of the office of the Mayor of Bournemouth 25-26 and the subsequent Deputy Mayor of Bournemouth and 26-27. Mr Fraser, would you please introduce that report?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Yes, following nominations being sought prior to Christmas, I am pleased to confirm that Councillor Jackie Edwards is confirmed as Mayor-elect by way of uncontested nomination.
May I be the first to congratulate you, Jackie. I think it's very well deserved. I've seen from a distance your work within your ward, and I think you will uphold the mayoralty of Bournemouth very, very well. May I, as well as congratulate you, can I invite you to say a few words if you wish?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got a few words. I've got it to just under an hour, so I hope that's all right with you. But it's a great honour to be proposed, and I'd like to thank those that made that possible for me to take up the opportunity of being Mayor for the next year. Some of you may know that I had quite a difficult and quite stressful year last year. So I'm really hoping that this year coming up will be a lot more enjoyable than the one that's just gone. So I think, George, you're going to be a really hard act to follow. So, but I'm hoping as deputy you're going to help me sort of settle into the role. So I'm sure that you'll be brilliant at helping me with that. I'm not actually native to Bournemouth. I wasn't actually born here. But I have to say that I do feel Bournemouth as being, I feel really, really at home in Bournemouth. I absolutely love it here. And I'm really looking forward to meeting lots of people who also call this town their home. So thank you.
It's so rare that we actually hear applause in this particular chamber, so I'm pleased to be in the chair when it is well-deserved and well-raised. One of the traditions which sort of died away a little bit from when I first attended the mayor-making ceremony in 2019, and I'll bring it to the Charter Trustees' attention, is that there used to be a sweepstake on the incoming mayor and how long the length of the speech would actually be. Now, I don't necessarily endorse gambling in the chamber, so I'd prefer if you did it outside. But what was quite nice in 2019 is that we all chipped in £1 and said it will be 20 minutes, 28 minutes, whatever. But the incoming Charter Mayor has the opportunity to nominate a charity which they support, or maybe one or two. And what was quite nice about that little bit of fun with a sweepstake is that was the very first donation that went to that particular Mayor's charity. You've had a little clue there from Councillor Edwards, Mayor-elect, as regards a little bit under an hour. So whoever's running the book, I think that should make it fairly easy to chop up into 5-minute quadrants. You have something to say, Councillor Edwards.
I just wanted to say that I do remember in 2019 that you were the first winner of the money. You won it once as well, yeah. He guessed right as to how long they would speak for, so yes. I told him that he had to donate that money to charity, but which is only a joke really, but I think you did actually, George, so thank you.
Yes, indeed, and you'll find, Mayor-elect, that there are many traditions and a lot of institutional memory that will come your way, and I'm more than happy as Deputy Mayor to support you fully in your journey ahead, and I wish you joy of it. So, I don't believe that there is any other business, so that will conclude the meeting, and thank you for your attendance, and we can close off the live stream. Oh, just before we do that, as ever, I'll be waiting at the door with my Mayor's contact details on a business card, which I wish you to share with your community groups, your schools, etc., because I still don't think there's enough work coming my way. I'd like to be able to visit schools and charity groups and community groups in your wards. So, thank you very much. Meeting concluded.
Charter Trustees, officers, please be upstanding for the Worshipful, the Mayor of Bournemouth. Thank you.